The morning sun cast long shadows across the bustling chai kiosk in Kiambu, where the aroma of freshly brewed tea mingled with cardamom and ginger created an atmosphere ripe for storytelling. Mzee Kamau, a retired teacher whose weathered hands spoke of decades spent shaping young minds, sat at his usual corner table, savoring both his tea and the peaceful start to another day. His routine was as predictable as the sunrise: chai at 7, newspapers by 8, and home before the midday heat became unbearable. But this morning would be different. Mama Sarah burst through the kiosk's entrance like a woman carrying fire, her colorful chitinge dress swishing with urgency and her eyes bright with the kind of news that transforms ordinary conversations into legendary tales. She was the unofficial town crier, a woman whose network of cousins, neighbors, and church friends stretched across 3 counties and whose ability to gather information rivaled that of any intelligence service. Mzee Kamau, she called out, barely containing her excitement as she approached his table. You will not believe what I have heard. The whole of Kenya is talking about it, from Mombasa to Kisumu. Mzee Kamau looked up from his newspaper, his reading glasses perched precariously on his nose. He had known Mama Sarah for 15 years, and he could read the signs. This wasn't ordinary gossip. This was the kind of story that would be retold in chai kiosks and matatu stations for months to come. Sit down, Mama Sarah, he said, gesturing to the plastic chair across from him. Order your tea first, then tell me what has got you so excited that you're practically dancing. She waved dismissively at the suggestion of tea. Mzee, there is no time for tea. Do you know what happened at President Ruto's son's wedding yesterday? The one at State House that was supposed to be the event of the year? Mzee Kamau folded his newspaper carefully, giving Mama Sarah his full attention. The president's son's wedding had been the talk of the nation for weeks, a lavish affair that was supposed to showcase the best of Kenyan hospitality and elegance. Every detail had been planned with military precision, from the imported flowers to the celebrity chef flown in from South Africa. What about it? He asked, though something in Mama Sarah's expression told him this story would be worth the wait. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper that somehow managed to carry to every corner of the small kiosk. The wine ran out, Mzee. At the president's son's wedding, with all those dignitaries, all those cameras, all that planning, the wine finished. The ceramic mug slipped from Mzee Kamau's fingers, clattering against the wooden table and sending droplets of tea across his newspaper. Around them, other patrons had stopped their conversations, drawn in by the magnetic pull of scandal involving the highest office in the land. Mama Sarah, you cannot be serious, he said, his voice a mixture of disbelief and fascination. The president of Kenya, with all the resources of the state, with advisors and planners and budgets that could feed entire villages, and the wine runs out at his son's wedding? I swear on my mother's grave, Mama Sarah declared, raising her right hand as if taking an oath in court. My cousin's daughter works for the catering company. She was there, serving the guests, when it happened. She sent me a WhatsApp message at midnight, still shaking from the drama. By now, the entire kiosk had fallen silent except for the gentle bubbling of tea being prepared. Even Mama and Jerry, the kiosk owner, had stopped wiping down tables to listen. This was the kind of story that would be dissected and analyzed for weeks. Tell us everything, Mzee Kamau said, settling back in his chair like a man preparing for an epic tale. Mama Sarah's eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of a master storyteller who knows she has her audience completely captivated. Picture this, Mzee. State House gardens transformed into something from a fairy tale. White tents that could house entire families, flowers that cost more than most people's monthly salary, and a guest list that read like a who's who of East Africa. Presidents from neighboring countries, business moguls, celebrities, religious leaders, everyone who matters was there. She paused to accept a cup of tea from Mama and Jerry, who had decided that such momentous news deserved proper refreshment. The ceremony was beautiful, she continued. My cousin's daughter said the bride looked like a queen, and the groom was so handsome in his tailored suit. The Archbishop himself performed the ceremony, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house when they exchanged vows. Everything was perfect, Mzee. Too perfect. And then? Prompted Mzee Kamau, though he suspected he knew where this story was heading. The reception started at 4 o'clock. The band was playing, the food was flowing, and the wine, oh, the wine. They had imported bottles from France, South Africa, even some from California. The servers were moving through the crowd with silver trays, making sure every glass was full. The president gave a beautiful speech about love and family, and everyone toasted the happy couple. Mama Sarah took a sip of her tea, building the suspense like a seasoned performer. But you know how these things go, Z. The celebration got more and more lively. The older guests were telling stories and laughing, the younger ones were dancing, and everyone was having such a good time that the wine was flowing like the Tana River during the rainy season. By 7 o'clock, my cousin's daughter noticed the servers looking worried. By 8 o'clock, they were whispering urgently to each other. And by 9 o'clock, the wine was finished, Kamau concluded, shaking his head in amazement. Completely finished. Mama Sarah confirmed. Not a drop left. And this is where it gets interesting, Z. Do you remember the story from the Bible, the wedding at Cana in Galilee? A slow smile spread across Kamau's weathered face. Where Jesus turned water into wine when the wedding feast ran short. You're telling me our president found himself in the same situation as that bridegroom 2,000 years ago? Exactly. But here's where our story gets even better. Mama Rachel, the First Lady, she was the first to notice the problem. She has that mother's instinct, She saw the servers looking confused, saw the empty bottles being carried away, and she knew there was trouble. The kiosk had filled up during Mama Sarah's storytelling, and now a small crowd had gathered around their table. Word was spreading through the neighborhood that Mama Sarah had inside information about the wedding of the century, and people were abandoning their morning routines to hear the tale. So what did she do? Asked Mama and Jerry, wiping her hands on her apron as she joined the circle of listeners. She went straight to her husband, Mama Sarah continued, her voice taking on the cadence of a biblical narrator. She found him talking to the Ugandan president about trade agreements, and she whispered in his ear, "William, we have a problem. The wine is finished." And what did he say? This from a young man who had been on his way to work but had stopped to listen. According to my cousin's daughter, who was close enough to hear, the president looked at his wife like she had told him the treasury was empty. "What do you mean, finished?" he asked. "We ordered enough wine for 500 people. But Mama Rachel just gave him that look that wives give their husbands when they need to fix something immediately." Kamau chuckled, recognizing the universal nature of that particular marital communication. So what happened next? Did they send someone to the nearest supermarket? This is where the story becomes truly Kenyan, Mama Sarah said, her voice rising with excitement. The president could have sent his security detail to buy more wine. He could have called in favors from his wealthy friends. He could have made it a state emergency and had wine airlifted from Nairobi. But instead, something beautiful happened. She paused, looking around at the expectant faces surrounding her. Word spread quietly among the guests that there was a shortage. And you know what happened? Without any announcement, without any official request, the guests started sharing. The governor of Nakuru had brought a case of wine as a gift, he offered it to the servers. The CEO of Safaricom had a bottle of champagne in his car, he sent his driver to get it. Even some of the religious leaders who had brought grape juice for their own consumption offered it to be mixed with whatever wine was left. "A harambe for wine," exclaimed Mama and Jerry, clapping her hands together. "Only in Kenya." "Exactly." Mama Sarah beamed. My cousin's daughter said it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Powerful people, wealthy people, important people, all quietly contributing whatever they had to make sure the celebration could continue. The servers collected all the bottles and mixed everything together in the kitchen. French wine with South African wine with Kenyan wine with grape juice, it became a truly African blend. Kamau leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. Mama Sarah, this reminds me not just of the wedding at Cana, but of something deeper. In that biblical story, Jesus didn't just solve a problem, he revealed something about the nature of abundance and community. And maybe that's what happened here too. "How do you mean, asked the young man who was now completely absorbed in the story. "Think about it," Kamau said, his teacher's instincts taking over. Here was the most powerful man in Kenya, with all the resources of the state at his disposal, facing the same problem that any ordinary family might face at their wedding. And the solution didn't come from his power or his wealth, it came from the generosity of his community. "That's beautiful, said Mama Sarah, nodding approvingly. "And you know what the best part is?" My cousin's daughter said that when the president stood up to give his final toast of the evening, he acknowledged what had happened. He thanked everyone for their contributions and said that the wine they were drinking, this mixture of gifts from friends and family, was sweeter than any expensive bottle because it was seasoned with love and community spirit. "Did he really say that?" asked Mama and Jerry, her eyes bright with tears. "Those were his exact words," according to my cousin's daughter. And then he said something that made everyone laugh and cry at the same time. He said, "Today I learned that even a president can run out of wine, but a community never runs out of love." The crowd around the table erupted in appreciative murmurs and gentle applause. This was the kind of story that would be retold and embellished for generations, a tale that revealed the humanity behind power and the strength that comes from community. "But wait," said the young man, a mischievous glint in his eye. "What did the wine taste like? This mixture of everything?" Mama Sarah grinned. "My cousin's daughter said it was the strangest thing. By all rights, mixing French wine with South African wine with Kenyan wine with grape juice should have created something terrible. But she swears it was the best wine she had ever tasted. She said it was as if all the different flavors had somehow harmonized into something greater than the sum of its parts." "A miracle," whispered Mama and Jerry. "Or maybe," said Mzee Kamau thoughtfully, "just a reminder that when people come together with generous hearts, even the simplest things can become extraordinary." As the crowd began to disperse, people heading off to their daily routines with a story that would brighten their conversations for weeks to come, Mzee Kamau and Mama Sarah sat in comfortable silence, finishing their tea. "You know, Mama Sarah," Mzee Kamau finally said, "I think this story will be told long after we're gone. Not because a president ran out of wine, but because it reminds us that we're all just human beings trying to celebrate life's precious moments together. And that sometimes," Mama Sarah added with a smile, "the best miracles happen when we share what we have with each other." They clinked their mugs together, the sound echoing through the now quiet kiosk like a benediction over a story that had transformed an ordinary morning into something memorable. Outside, the sun climbed higher in the sky, but inside the chai kiosk, the warmth of community and the power of a well-told story lingered like the aroma of perfectly brewed tea. In the days that followed, the story of the president's son's wedding would spread across Kenya like wildfire, growing and changing with each telling. Some versions would focus on the embarrassment of running out of wine, others on the generosity of the guests. But the version that would endure, the one that would be told in chai kiosks and around dinner tables for years to come, was the one that Mama Sarah had shared that morning, a story about the miracle that happens when a community comes together, and how sometimes the most powerful people in the world need the same thing that everyone else needs, the love and support of their neighbors. And in a small way, it was a story about how ancient truths, about hospitality, community, and the abundance that comes from sharing, remain as relevant today as they were 2,000 years ago at a wedding in Cana of Galilee.